Hello and welcome back to the World Championship in Through the Ages. I'm quite happy about how this stage has gone for me so far. I have 3 games finished and have won 2 of those, and the third one I finished at the second place. With that, I'm leading the group at the moment, even though I have fewer games finished. However, 14 points won't very likely be enough to advance to the next stage, and with that, I still need to score some more points. And the next opportunity to do so will be in a 2-player game against PV4. PV4 didn't have the greatest start into the stage, but he managed to win his last 2 games, and with that he made sure that he is still in the running for the advancement to the next stage. And so for him this 2-player game is also quite important. If he wins this game, he doesn't have bad chances to advance to the next stage. If he loses it, then it gets quite difficult, but he still wouldn't be completely out of the running. And now without further ado, we are going to take a look at the game. I am playing in the second position in this game, and first of all we are going to take a look at the leaders and wonders. And I think in 2-player games it's most important to first of all take a look how the culture leader situation is. And we can see that in H2 there are not the most culture leaders, but there is Shakespeare, so that could be quite an important leader. And if I should manage to get Shakespeare going, maybe I have quite a nice position, especially because there's also Gandhi in H3, there's also Fleming in H3, and the Hollywood, so there's definitely some cultures in H3, but not the most leaders for it, so it could be quite important maybe who gets those leaders, and no, maybe it could also be important to find a nice alternative game plan in case those leaders aren't possible, maybe going for some military pressure or something else. Then we also have some lab leaders in H3 with Bill Gates, Einstein, Steve Jobs, also Marie Curie. The spaceflight is there as well. The Red Cross is also there. In H2 we have no ocean liner service, but we have Suez Canal and James Cook in the game, so that's of course also a strong combination, and maybe also a plan how to plan this game with going maybe for a colonization strategy. There's also the Harvard College, the railroad. We have 2 military action leaders in H2 with Robespierre and Napoleon. There's also Nobel as quite a solid leader. Then in H1 there's Columbus, who could potentially work nicely in a colonization game, as well as Barbarossa. There are Leonardo and Gutenberg for some lab and printing press synergy. Then there's Joan of Arc and Nostradamus, who can help with the strength. Machu Picchu is in the game, Universitas, there's the Great Wall, and also the Forbidden City. PV4 starts with taking Hippocrates. He doesn't want to take the Rome roads, then I could maybe just take Hippocrates, and the only leader for him would be Aristotle, and Aristotle and Rome roads maybe wouldn't be that great of a combination for him. However, if he takes Hippocrates now, then I can just deny the library for him. Maybe that's still a better situation for him. I could of course also take the Rome roads, but then I have the same problem that I just described for PV4. The only leader that would be available for one civil action for me at the moment would be Aristotle, and he is maybe not that great together with the Rome roads, and so I rather just took the library. Like this, Aristotle can maybe work a little bit better, and I also only would have maybe taken the frugality together with the Rome roads, so it's not that bad to miss out on the yellow card. And like this, I take the library away from PV4. He now can decide if he wants to go for Hanging Gardens or if he maybe wants to wait for Colossus or an H1 Wonder. Also, I think I like library just a bit more in 2-player games than the Rome roads. Then it's PV4's turn. He goes for Hippocrates, builds a mine, increases his population, and he will take the Hanging Gardens. He doesn't want to wait for an H1 Wonder, and I mean he might get the Engineering Genius 2 at the next turn. Then it's definitely not bad to have a Wonder available, and the Hanging Gardens can definitely be quite a fine Wonder. This turn I go for Aristotle, however there would have been some alternatives. There's also Confucius available in the row. He would of course cost 1 civil action more, but I think Confucius is quite a strong leader, maybe especially in 2-player games, and I maybe would be able to generate more science with him, also maybe more consistently, and I would be able to see it maybe dominating the first event deck a little bit. And I definitely considered paying an additional civil action for him. In some situations I maybe would also go for this. However, if I take Confucius here, then this Engineering Genius 1 falls down to 2 civil actions for PV4. And and that's also why I won't take the Engineering Genius 2. There are just some very interesting cards coming down the row, and I think I will be able to use my civil actions better than taking Engineering Genius A for 2 civil actions if I now go for Confucius. I thought that maybe PV4 could consider just building a lab and then taking both of the Engineering Geniuses. If this one falls down to 2, that would be possible, and I didn't like it too much. I'm not sure if PV4 would do this. There could maybe be some alternatives, but I think it might be a nice option for him, and so I at the end just went for Aristotle. He's maybe a little bit weaker than Confucius, but I don't have to pay an additional civil action for him, and that makes sure that the Engineering Genius stays on 3 civil actions for PV4, and maybe I will be able then to take it at the next turn, and then I can nicely use it on the second stage of the library. Now it's PV4's turn, and I interestingly draw 2 colonies, so maybe Vlada is pushing me already a little bit into a colonization game, and I was especially happy because the vast territory is just very nice to have in hand with Columbus. Aristotle is a leader that can also work very nicely late in H1, and sometimes there you even can get quite a lot of value out of him, so it could now be a nice option to maybe just keep Aristotle for quite a while of H1 and then go for Columbus at the end of H1. PV4 seats, and the development of planning is revealed. The options for that are development of politics, trade routes, and crafts. So trade routes might be the best option here, unless you can maybe get something very specific out of the development of crafts. PV4 will take the development of trade routes. He takes the Engineering Genius A for 1 civil action, and then he just builds 2 stages of the Hanging Gardens and increases his population. Is willing to delay his lab, but maybe building the 2 stages just allows him a bit of a better civil action efficiency, because otherwise maybe he would have to grab also one of those HA cards, and also he leaves himself maybe open to go for printing presses, and with being Shakespeare being in the game and with him being the only big culture leader in H2, that could be quite nice, being just having some printing presses going. Now it's my turn. I will take the alchemy here. That maybe will allow me to upgrade my economy. Also taking it scores me 1 science with Aristotle. If I don't take it, maybe PV4 can go with it. Maybe can even build a lab at some point directly. That maybe could have been another reason to not build the second lab yet. And so I just wanted to have that for myself. Of course, as I said, it could be quite nice to be on printing presses, but printing presses aren't coming down the row, and so I didn't want to wait too long for them, and just getting some economy going I think is still not bad, and maybe I can still, in addition to the alchemy, go for printing presses or maybe for journalisms later on, and so I went for the alchemy. And I also went for the Engineering Genius. I think that's just a very strong card and will maybe allow me to boost my economy and get all of my things going quicker. If I don't take it, PV4 can take it for 1 civil action, so I think that would be quite strong for him. He probably won't use it in the Hanging Gardens, but he might still get an H1 wonder or an H2 wonder at some point, and then it could still be a very nice card to get for 1 civil action. Now I have 1 civil action left, and the big question here is basically if I want to build my second lab to get out of corruption, or if I want to increase my population to get out of corruption. If I increase my population, then I might have the option to actually build an alchemy directly at the next turn and then basically save a civil action in the process, so that is definitely not bad. However, if I increase my population, not only do I not build a lab and miss out on 1 science, but I also get into consumption and miss out on 1 food. So building this lab now instead of increasing population basically gives me 1 additional science and 1 additional food. And then there's also the case that when I increase my population now, maybe with the intention to build an alchemy directly at the next turn, then maybe it could be that there are some cards available that I really want to take. Maybe I come to the conclusion that finishing the library could maybe be more interesting. Maybe I could just build an alchemy. I think that might just very likely be possible. But then I also would kind of be committed to do it, because if I then at the next turn don't build the alchemy directly, then I definitely would have missed out on quite some value from not building the lab now. So at the end I built a lab just to get the science going immediately, but I think it could definitely be a nice alternative to just increase my population here. Like this, I would also be prepared for development of religion and warfare, and I could maybe just build an alchemy directly at the next turn. Then I draw 2 cards, the Legion Tactic and the Kidnap. The Legion Tactic maybe is quite interesting to have. PV4 seeds, the development of settlement is revealed. So like this, I have now again a free population in case there's development of religion or something coming. PV4 will build the second lab, will also finish the Hanging Gardens this turn. And then with his last 2 civil actions, he takes the irrigation, which is a nice technology to have in 2-player games. Also takes the drama, which is also a nice technology to have in 2-player games. Now it's my turn, and this turn I could potentially think about just finishing the library. However, if I want to use the Engineering Genius, and that's the only way how I could finish it, then I would only spend 3 resources, and that would not be enough to get out of corruption, meaning with my last civil action I would have to increase my population. I definitely considered it, because maybe You don't necessarily need to take a card, but there are some interesting ones. There is, for example, the Breakthrough, which is a very nice card to take, but also the Swordsman could be very interesting. And so instead of getting one additional science production from the library, I just went for Alchemy here, went for one upgrade, then increased my population, and now I have one civil action left. And at the end I actually made the decision to go for the Swordsman here. It's cost me one science with Aristotle. I have the Legion tactic in hand, so like this I have a way how I can increase my strength, and the Breakthrough basically would only give me one science more, but like this I also have maybe a useful technology in hand, so I rather went for the Swordsman than the Breakthrough here. And no, I think getting the Swordsman is quite nice, and because of that I also was willing to go for the Alchemy instead of the Library, and maybe I can then finish the Library at the next turn. Thanks to the Engineering Genius I will have enough resources to do so. I draw one card. It's another territory, so if one reason why I revealed the Legion tactic already is because I wanted to keep both of those colonies in hand, because if I should get the cartography, who knows, maybe there could be quite a big colonization game possible, so I was willing to reveal the Legion tactic just to keep all of the colonies, and now I have even an additional colony drawn. PV4 seeds, so he already has seeded 3 events. The development of religion is revealed. Maybe not an ideal development for PV4, because with having the Hanging Gardens he maybe doesn't need the Happy Faces that much, especially also with having the Hippocrates tokens, but he still takes it, and I definitely think that's the correct decision. He will go for Barbarossa, interestingly, this turn, and also the Knights. And then he will elect Barbarossa. He has already collected 3 tokens from Hippocrates, develops the Knights, and goes for 1 and even a second Barbarossa activation after he has taken the Cultural Heritage. So he is now at 4 strength and is looking a little bit dangerous, because if he has nice tactic like Phalanx or Medieval Army, then he could go for another Knight at the next turn, reveal the tactic, and he would already be at 9 or 10 strength. So that is definitely a bit threatening. Maybe he could also have an aggression in hand, and then things could definitely get a bit dangerous. At my turn I definitely don't want to seed. PV4 might have seeded some strength events, and I don't want to rush them out of the deck. And no, this turn I will go for finishing the library, and that will increase my economy again a little bit. I could of course also say that I need to maybe go for Swordsman or something this turn, because the thing is I actually have no defense card in hand, so if PV4 would try an aggression now I would not be able to defend. And I could also, even now that I've finished the library, still go for developing the Swordsman and then going for 1 upgrade to it, just making sure that I can defend myself. However, if I go for this, then I maybe just can't defend myself in 2 turns, and maybe that is even more dangerous, because then I the next turn could maybe only build another Swordsman, go up to 4 strength, and PV4, as I said, can go up to 9 or 10 strength, so I felt like I kinda need to prepare myself to also increase my strength by quite a lot, and took the reserves at the end, so that I the next turn can play the reserves or resources and build 2 swordsmen, so that I would fulfill the Legion tactic and I would go up to 7 strength, maybe allowing me to have a chance to defend, and I, like this, also will get 2 draws in, and I was hoping that PV4 won't try an aggression now, and maybe I could also just draw a defense card, so maybe I can then defend if he goes for an aggression, and also in general if I draw a defense card then I actually would also be able to defend if PV4 for example has the Medieval Army tactic and goes for another Knight at the next turn, reveals the tactic, is a 10 strength, because then with 1 defense card I would be able to defend if I go for 2 swordsmen, and then I would be at 7 strength. However, of course, I could have also gotten, I could have maybe also build a swordsman, for example, this turn, and then take the reserves, and then at the next turn go for another swordsman and then finish the library. But at the next turn I might have a lot of things to do. I will probably want to go for Columbus, and then also finishing the library, and maybe then playing reserves and building another swordsman might just be too much to do. Maybe I could set something up like this, but I just was hoping that PV4 won't try an aggression now. Maybe he's rather hoping that he can, with Barbarossa, just more effectively build some strength and then pull off the aggression later on. And so I was willing to finish the library now. It also just gives me a bit more of economical value, and it's a little bit greedy, but with taking the reserves, at least I will be able to go for 2 swordsmen at the next turn. I was hoping that that will somehow be enough to maybe defend myself. Now I was very curious to see if I draw defense cards. Sadly not. I draw 2 tactics, so maybe if I get knights I have an alternative now. No, but if PV4 tries an aggression now, I would not be able to defend. Luckily he doesn't, he instead cedes, and the development of civil life is revealed. And the good news is, if this last card is a tactic, and I kinda suspected that it is a tactic, otherwise going for knights already in Barbarossa, I'm not sure if it would be the correct move then, and that could then maybe mean that he actually doesn't have an aggression in hand, which would be quite relieving for me. The development of civil life is revealed. PV4 uses that to develop the irrigation. He doesn't want to spend food because he wants to use that for Barbarossa. He reveals the medieval army tactic now, so he has no cards left in hand now, meaning that, no, that's definitely a bit relieving. He has no aggression in hand for now. He doesn't draw that many cards, so maybe I'm not that much in danger. PV4 will also go for a food upgrade, meaning that he doesn't build this knight yet. It's maybe not really necessary because he wouldn't draw any cards, so he couldn't push, he couldn't try and go for an aggression anyway, so it's maybe not really necessary to do it this turn, and getting one additional food production going is more important. And then interestingly, he is just grabbing the Code of Laws for 3 civil actions. That's an interesting pick. Probably he just wants to make sure that I don't get it. I have a lot of science, it would be a nice technology to invest my stuff into it, and if he takes some other stuff instead, then it would fall down to 2 civil actions for me. I'm actually not sure if I would have taken it for 2 civil actions. I mean, maybe, especially because there's the development of civil life, which allows me to increase my population for free. So for example, I could go for developing swordsmen, playing reserves, building one and taking the Code of Laws, but I also kind of want to go for Columbus, so maybe I would have not gone for, maybe I could have also used development of civil life to develop the swordsman, then only build 1 for now. PV4 didn't go for that much strength yet, so I probably would have found a way to grab it for 2 civil actions, and maybe PV4 just wants to make sure that I don't get it, because I have a lot of science that definitely would give a boost to my position. And also the other cards maybe not that great for PV4, just some technologies. He can't invest into that many technologies anyway. Maybe he can still go for the iron at the next turn if he lets it stay in 2 civil actions, so maybe the Code of Laws is the best thing to grab after all. I then this turn go for Swordsman. The event deck has just flipped, and I definitely expected that there might be some strength events in there, so this turn I wanted to build those 2 Swordsmen, because with going up to 7 strength I'm actually stronger than PV4 now. I will also go for Columbus, however I don't have to elect him now, because there will be another turn in H1. PV4 can't grab 3 cards that aren't on the discard spot, so I don't have to elect Columbus yet. Maybe I can still score another science with Aristotle, for example. The cartography could maybe still be an interesting technology with having all of those colonies, maybe also just to get a little bit of additional strength going. And then I also already grab another technology this turn, the masonry. Maybe could save me 1 resource when going for this upgrade, could save me some more resources if I go for some other urban buildings later on, and maybe could also help me with finishing a wonder efficiently, and it just also gives me now science with Aristotle. I don't have that much else to do with my last civil action. I could have maybe also thought about theology. That could maybe also be an interesting card to take. There's no Pierre in the game, but with getting the vast territory, I also maybe don't really need a happy face technology in the near future. I keep all of my colonies in hand, because who knows, maybe it's still possible to go for a colonization game. However, for now it would also be a bit dangerous, because going for colonies against Barbarossa has definitely a potential to backfire quite heavily. Then PV4 this turn will use Barbarossa again to build another knight. He didn't push, but it could also be that he just doesn't have an event. And but he makes sure to get stronger. He has seeded all of the events, so it's definitely indicating that there are some strength events coming. Everything else would surprise me a little bit with his actions of going for Barbarossa and such. So I definitely expected some strength events to be coming, but sadly it also won't really be easy for me to make sure to get stronger at the next turn. And then PV4 will just play the cultural heritage, takes the iron and the ridgeland, then can maybe start going for some iron production at the next turn. Now it is my turn. I will use Aristotle 1 last time to grab this cartography. As I said, maybe it could still be nice to go for some colonies. There's the Suez Canal and James Cook. Who knows, maybe even PV4 had seeded some colonies. Maybe one tries to win those with Barbarossa. That could also potentially be the case. And it also just gives me a little bit of additional strength, and could maybe also help me trying to still compete in the strength race. So I go for the cartography, I then elect Columbus because I won't take another technology with Aristotle. I then take the urban growth. I could already go for another upgrade to my lab this turn, but I thought I maybe rather want to use this urban growth for that. And then I also take the rich land. I will develop the cartography, and then I will also go for one upgrade to warriors that allows me to get out of corruption. So with that I take 2 yellow cards so far. I didn't upgrade any iron mines yet, and I think those 2 cards that give me both 2 resources might be quite helpful to maybe also get some stuff going quicker later on. And also I just thought it could be nice to develop the cartography. Who knows, maybe PV4 has seeded a strength event, and yeah, and so at the end I just went for developing the cartography. Otherwise I would be at 8 strength. I mean, that would also be enough to defend myself. I do draw 1 card. If I would not draw any card, then it could be dangerous maybe to stay at 8 strength, because PV4 could then play an aggression and remove my colonies from my hand if I want to defend. So, but I do draw 1 card, so maybe it could also be an alternative to just increase my population or something like this. So I'm not 100% certain if developing the cartography is the correct move here. Maybe there's a reason that there was a reason that I don't remember at the moment. But as I said, who knows? Maybe PV4 could have seeded some colonies. He skipped the cartography, but he also doesn't have the most science, so it could potentially still be the case. And so maybe it could be nice to develop it already this turn. I still leave myself with 12 science. That is important because there will be the first stage 2 cards revealed at the next turn. I think it's important to be set up for a government form. So if the cartography would drop, would make it a drop in science that much that I can't go for a government form at the next turn, then I think it would be better to not develop it. I draw an aggression. H2 will start this turn. PV4 seeds, and that's actually no strength event, instead the scientific breakthrough, so that definitely surprised me a little bit. But yeah, maybe the science still helps PV4 quite a bit. He is relatively low in science, so the 2 science might be worth a little bit more, but of course I also was quite happy to get the 4 science out of this event. This turn PV4 will then go for iron mines, goes for 1 upgrade, takes the breakthrough and takes the frugality. He then uses Barbarossa again, going up to 12 strength. At the next turn he can potentially use him again, going for another warrior, so he definitely makes sure to stay stronger and to maybe also apply some pressure for me. This turn there is actually already a early government form available for me. That is definitely quite nice for me, with having that much science available now, and I think it's definitely something that I have to go for immediately. However, I didn't find really a nice turn where I go for the Republic and use Columbus already, so I skipped using him this turn. Maybe I could even be very lucky and draw an H2 colony if I wait a little bit, so I didn't use him this turn. I maybe have not that much interest in using a lot of my politics phases anyway, so I don't think it's too bad to wait with him, and I go for the Republic. I then have to increase my population. It first of all helps me getting out of corruption, but it also was necessary to avoid an uprising, and now I'm already out of corruption. It would not be the case if I go for the vast territory, because there are still some cards that I maybe want to grab. There's the iron, which could be very nice to have. If I don't get the coal, then I would be maybe stuck on bronze mines for quite a while, and it's maybe not that ideal. There's also the irrigation, which is quite an important technology in 2-player games, but there's also the warfare, and with having the Republic now, with not knowing if I get the strategy, the warfare might be quite an important technology, especially because PV4 is looking a bit dangerous. He could go for another Barbarossa activation at the next turn, and then things could already be a little bit dangerous, so the warfare is definitely also something to consider here. So I wanted to take 2 out of those 3 cards, and 1 card that I kinda really wanted to take, or actually that was not the one I wanted to talk about now, but I end up taking the warfare, and I also take the iron here. The iron I think is very nice to have here, because for example I can just go for 3 upgrades at the next turn if I want to. That would maybe be a little bit greedy, because you can maybe still see I have still no defense card in hand. PV4 could potentially try an aggression, but he would miss out on H2 draws, and it is not that unlikely that I have 1 defense card, so I think it's very costly for him to try it out, and I again also have the chance to draw another defense card, so I think it's fine maybe to stay at 9 strength here. Of course, it's also a bit risky. But if PV4 doesn't go for a lot more strength, maybe I can then go for iron at the next turn just for some upgrades, and I just think it's nice to have in hand. having a very strong economy is maybe not that important in two-player games, but I still think it is quite a bit easier to play if you maybe have 6 resource production going than only 3. And then I also take the Warfare, because I just felt a little bit too vulnerable without it. I could maybe hope, if I don't get a strategy, to maybe go for Napoleon at some point, but I don't know if I will get him, I don't know when I will get him, and so it just felt a bit safer to have the Warfare in hand. With that I can react if PV4 goes for another Warrior the next turn. I can maybe also just develop the Warfare, going up to 3 military actions already, also increasing my strength by a little bit. With that, of course, I miss out on the irrigation, and that is something that can be dangerous. There's also no ocean liner service in the game to maybe make up for my missing food production if I should not be able to get the selective breeding. However, in this situation I was willing to skip the irrigation, because maybe it's not a technology that I would go for first anyway. I think if I have the freedom to upgrade some of my economy, maybe I would go for iron first. And also PV4, I think, is really not in a position where he can easily hate draft a lot. So if selective breeding is available for 3 civil actions on his turn, maybe he could take it, but I think it would be quite costly for him, and maybe with getting the vast territory and the additional yellow tokens, I could still manage myself, even if I miss out on the selective breeding. But as I said, it would be quite costly for PV4 to deny it. Maybe he will just not deny it and I will be able to get it. Maybe it will just be revealed in my turn. So with that, I was willing to skip the irrigation here. Now, I definitely was quite happy that this Republic was available. I think that gives me quite a nice boost. Leaves me maybe a little bit vulnerable, but with the Warfare, hopefully I will be fine. Also, I was kinda hoping to maybe draw a defense card so that I can finally feel a little bit safer, but there's no defense card yet. Instead, there's the Terrorism or the Conquistadors tactic. So I have a tactic in hand now, not the ideal one, but better than having none. But PV4 could again try an aggression, and I would not be able to defend. But as I said, it would be quite costly, so he instead rather seeds, and he also gets something nice out of that. The border conflict is revealed, so I get hit by a strength event, but it definitely, I had to expect this. I definitely expected that there were some strength events coming. I sadly didn't have a nice way to prepare myself for that, so PV4 gets some additional resource, and I sadly will have to lose something at my turn. PV4 then will develop the Code of Laws. It goes up to 5 civil actions now, and it should definitely be helpful for him. On the other hand, maybe it makes it also a little bit more difficult to go for the Conmon at some point, but no, maybe it's just a bit safer to go for the safe 5th civil action now. He also goes for 1 and upgrade to his mines, uses Barbarossa, takes the breakthrough and takes the wave of nationalism, so he's now at 15 strength. Is looking a bit it's looking a bit threatening. Has 1 H2 card in hand. He didn't have that many draws, so maybe it's just nothing dangerous for me, but it could be, so I was definitely a bit worried. And then he just takes 2 strong yellow cards. Interestingly, he took the breakthrough over the revolutionary idea. The revolutionary idea is, of course, less efficient, but I think in this situation it could maybe be the better pick. I mean, it depends on his plans. Maybe he plans on developing a relatively cheap technology relatively soon, but the revolutionary idea could maybe allow him to go for Conmon a turn earlier, because he can play it before developing it, and also he can more easily make space in his hands, so maybe it could be an idea to take the revolutionary idea instead of the breakthrough. This turn I will use Columbus, and as you can see, I go for Napoleon immediately. I just felt quite a bit vulnerable with staying only on 2 military actions, and with PV4 being at 15 strength. And of course the thing is, if I don't take Napoleon, then PV4 would be able to go for him, and he then would be at 19 strength, and then things could start to get really, really dangerous. So I think I kinda have to go for Napoleon here, or everything else might be just too dangerous, and at least he will give me a bit of additional strength. The military action will be useful, even if I should end up going for warfare strategy. I think it is still then nice to maybe have still 1 additional military action. I will elect him, going up to 11 strength, and then I could potentially think about denying this Conmon, because I could take it, and then I could, for example, build this alchemy. I lost an HA lab, because and then I thought maybe building H1 lab is the best way to get out of corruption anyway, and I otherwise maybe would have to upgrade it, so I don't really lose the civil action, only the resources. And with that I lost this HA lab, and so I could, for example, rebuild it now with the urban growth, build a swordsman that would get me out of corruption, and then I would still have 3 civil actions to take the Conmon away. but I think it is not necessary to do this in this situation, because PV4 is just not that nicely set up to go for the conman very quickly. At some point, of course, he will probably be able to go for it, and then it might be a nice card for him, but I think there are some other cards, or it's just there are some other ways how I can play this turn that are better for me, for myself, and PV4 can't that easily go for the conman, so I was willing to let it be there for him. Then of course I still have to find a way to get out of corruption, and I, even with not planning to go for the conman, still made a decision to just rebuild this lab immediately using the urban growth. If I don't use this, it's not certain if I will be able to use it again. I could potentially now again maybe build a swordsman to get out of corruption, and I would have 3 civil actions available to do some stuff, but instead I first of all increased my population. And I could of course build a swordsman. On one hand it would be safer, because I still don't have a defense card in hand, and again I could potentially be vulnerable for an aggression, but I will get 3 draws now, so there is a chance that I will draw a defense card, and it is still true that trying out an aggression for PV4 is quite costly. And I would only need 1 defense card. I left myself vulnerable for quite some turns, so it might definitely be looking like I have an H1 defense card in hand, and then it's just very expensive for him to try it out. And the problem is, if I build another swordsman, yes, it would make me safe, but it would also mean that I commit even another worker into the infantry units. I have 1 tactic in hand. For that tactic it wouldn't be that great, and also for a lot of other tactics it's not that great to be that heavily in infantry units. Would miss out on a draw to maybe potentially draw a better tactic, so I didn't want to build this additional swordsman. Of course, alternatively I could develop the warfare. I think I considered this even more, because it's maybe less of a commitment, but then I also would make it that I can't go for strategy, which is maybe the stronger technology, and maybe I would prefer to have that one if I should be able to get it, so that would also take this option away from me. And also then I only have 1 civil action left to take some stuff. Maybe that's not the most important, because I actually won't end up taking that important cards anyway. Still some useful, but maybe not that important, so it could be considered, but at the end I just stayed vulnerable for even another turn. I then made a decision to take the cannons. It's just nice to have this in hand. Of course I could maybe not take it, and PV4 with not having that many civil actions can maybe not that easily fight for the second copy, so maybe I could even make it that I can deny the second copy from him, but it's also just a bit dangerous. Like this, I have a military tech in hand, maybe make myself look a bit more dangerous. And I mean, PV4 probably won't go for wars anyway, he can't increase his strength after that. But I think it's just maybe a bit safer taking it now, otherwise I might miss out on it. Of course, maybe then I could go for conquistadors, but I just think it's not bad to get it now for 1 civil action. And then of course I thought about taking this revolutionary radio. It's a nice card to get for 1 civil action. However, if I take any of those 2 cards, then the conman drops down for 1 civil action to PV4, and I think in this situation it could actually make quite a big difference. And I also really thought about what PV4 might actually want to do at his turn, and I thought one is a strongest thing that he could go for would maybe be to go for the Harvard College. And if he goes for the Harvard College, then he could maybe maybe use 1 civil action to make space in his hand, maybe with developing the drama, which is maybe not ideal, but maybe it's something that he still wants to have. So he could develop the drama with the breakthrough, and then he could, if the conman is available for 1, take the Harvard College for 2, take the conman for 1, and then he's still 1 civil action left, and then he could maybe upgrade a mine or build the first step of the Harvard College, and could relatively easily get out of corruption. If the conman is available for 2, if he wants to do the same thing, then he could go for Harvard College and the conman, but it's really not that easily possible for him to get out of corruption. Actually I think I'm talking some bullshit here. Because PV4 of course has 1 space in hand, so he could take the Harvard College and the Constitutional Monarchy. But I think, I don't remember this turn that exactly, but I think I was also considering how easily can take maybe a card even in addition to the Harvard College and the conman, and also how easily he can maybe make it to go for the conman an additional card. So I think if I remember correctly, I considered quite some different turns for him, and I came to the conclusion that it makes maybe quite a difference if the conman stays available only for 2 civil actions. And of course, now I leave him the revolutionary idea, a potentially useful card, but if he wants to go for the Harvard College in the Conmon, then now he can't take the revolutionary idea. I also actually considered taking the journalism away, because I was a little bit afraid, maybe too much afraid, but I was afraid that he could go for the journalism, and maybe also the Conmon, then develop the drama, and then just go for Shakespeare later on, and then I maybe would be forced into military, and I felt a little bit uncomfortable about this, because Shakespeare has definitely shown some very dominating performances in a lot of two-player games, so I thought about if I should even just deny the journalism, but it would also not that easily be possible for PV Forces to set this up here, and would maybe have to skip a strong economical option for that. So like this, he probably would not be able to go for the Harvard College, and also then again the Common would fall down for one civil action, and then PV4 could then maybe make it possible to go for Harvard College, the revolutionary and the Conmon relatively easily, or he could relatively easily get out of corruption. So I, at the end, wanted to let the Conmon stay in 2 civil actions. I did not take the revolutionary. It could be a relatively nice card for me, but I also have a decent amount of science, and I thought it's really not that easy for PV4 to take this now, so I maybe will just skip it. And so at the end, I then rather went for the opera. And now, that's maybe not that important of a technology, especially, I mean, it can be very important in two-player games, but I will miss out on the journalism, so Shakespeare is not really that much of an option, so there's no synergy in H2. Of course, in H3 there is at some point Fleming, there's also the Hollywood, but there's no Marlene and Chaplin, and so the opera is maybe not that important, but it could still be nice to have, even without any synergies. Just being able to do some culture can be nice in two-player games, and so I thought it could still be worth it to pick this technology here. Then I will draw some cards, still no defense cards, so PV4 could again try an aggression, and I also have another tactic in hand, a Hussars, which maybe is an improvement. I mean, as long as I still have 2 swordsmen, Hussars might be better, but maybe there's a colony coming, or maybe I find another way to get rid of it. PV4 has now to pay 2 civil actions for the conman. He is willing to go for the Harvard College. I thought it might be nice for him. Of course, there's also scientific method available for him to maybe increase the science production, but he would have to invest science into that, and Harvard College just has the advantage that he doesn't have to invest any science, which will then allow him maybe to go for the Conmon earlier. So I expected that maybe he would go for the Harvard College, and then he will just build one step to get out of corruption. So so he could potentially also have built a mine, and he would still have enough resources, I think, to finish the Harvard College, but maybe he rather wanted to have the additional civil action available for the next turn. Now it's my turn. I still don't have any interest in pushing, and this turn I will just go for iron. And there's no coal available. I don't think it's worth it to wait for coal. I still want to get some resource production going. I think that is a nice thing to do here, and I can even go for just 3 upgrades. I think that is quite nice, just setting myself up with 6 resource production. Again, I won't develop the warfare this turn, and so I will again leave myself vulnerable, but again, it would still be very costly for PV4 to just try an aggression. I could still draw a defense card, and so I didn't see a big reason why. I mean, of course, it could be nice to not be in danger of getting hit by an aggression, but I don't think a lot has changed in comparison to the turns before. So if if I came to the conclusion that at the turn before it wasn't really worthwhile to do some stuff which I maybe don't really want to do just to make sure that I can defend, then I think it's maybe the same at this turn. There's a strategy available for 3 civil actions, which could be, of course, quite a nice technology for me, but I still have this warfare in hand as an alternative, and PV4 can't that easily take a lot of cards. He could, of course, take it. I will also not let it stay in 3. I will take 1 card from here so that it will fall away down to 2 civil actions. But again, it's not really that easily possible for PV4 to take, and if he takes it, I can just go for warfare, and PV4 can't that easily use it for himself, so I don't think it's worth it to grab the strategy for 3 civil actions here. And then I will just grab the cavalryman, just to make sure that I can go for those tactics. I will also grab the architecture. I have a lot of science, and I think that could be quite nice to have, maybe allowing myself to go for some relatively cheap operas. And then with the last civil action, I could potentially think about also taking the organized religion, but there's still another copy left, as well as a copy of team sports. And if I take it, then Nobel falls down for one civil action. And when we take a look at the leaders that are left for PV4, I think James Watt and Shakespeare are not really an option for him. So Nobel would be a strong option, and maybe Robespierre, allowing him to save 6 science under Conmon. But Nobel would be one of the two leaders that are strong for him, so he might want to go for him at the next turn, and so I wanted to let him stay on 2 civil actions, so so that he can't do that much on his turn. And so instead of taking another card, I just developed the architecture. It could be a nice card to already have developed, probably the card that I want to develop most, because I don't want to commit to the cavalryman left yet. I could draw defensive army, I could draw fortifications, so don't want to develop the warfare, because I might still want to go for the strategy. So I went for the architecture. It could maybe mean that I have a little bit of an issue with my science, because I maybe want to go for the strategy, I maybe want to go for the selective breeding that is still in the deck, and then maybe I also need to go for military tech, so it could be a little bit dangerous to invest the science into it, but I was hoping that I will be able to manage. I then draw 3 cards, and I even draw some more tactics, and I also have drawn the fortifications tactic now, which is probably now the most interesting tactic for me. I mean, I already had the hussars, but the fortifications is definitely a bit of an improvement. I also draw the Ravages of Time, which could be interesting, because PV4 has those hanging gardens. I also still kept a terrorism in hand, because I'm a little bit behind in culture, and I thought maybe that also could be an interesting card to push. I wasn't willing to push it this turn, I think I considered it, but it was still a little bit too uncertain for me how nicely I will be able to prepare for this terrorism. If the deck doesn't move that quickly, it could be a little bit awkward, so I wanted to wait a little bit. And I can still guarantee to get it into the next deck if I want to. PV4 could push, and then I could still push it into the next deck. So I thought that I maybe don't need to commit to it this turn, but it could be an interesting option for the next turn. But the Ravages of Time could also be an interesting option now. PV4 uses the frugality, that makes more space in his hand, and that allows him to go for Nobel. He will elect him, and then he can also still finish the Harvard College. And now at the next turn he will then finally have enough science to go for the Conmon. And science of Nobel actually allows it, so I think going for Nobel here really makes a lot of sense for PV4. Now it's my turn, and this turn I was willing to cede. I really thought if I want to see terrorism, or if I want to see the Ravages of Time, but at the end the Ravages of Time just felt a little bit safer. That should be an event that guaranteed does some damage to PV4, unless he goes for a lot of excessive FP phases anyway, but I thought there's the potential it hurts him quite heavily. The terrorism also has quite a lot of potential, but maybe it could also be awkward. Maybe I don't have at some point that much else to do, then go for maybe some operas, and it's still relatively close. Maybe I could try to go for the terrorism, but I went for the Ravages of Time, and at the end, if PV4 doesn't cede, maybe I also could have the option to then still push the terrorism into the next deck. That could be quite interesting, and I wasn't really certain. The terrorism could also be quite big. For example, PV4 maybe also could go for an opera or something at some point, then he would lose a lot, but for now he doesn't have that many expensive buildings, so at the end I just rather went for the Ravages of Time. There's actually a colony revealed, so my cartography is somewhat paying off now, but I was not willing to bid too much. I would have liked it a lot to win this colony and then maybe transition into fortifications, but I don't have enough resource to build 2 cannons, and if I send my whole army, then I would be quite vulnerable to an aggression. So I, at the end, wasn't willing to bid 3 swordsmen, I was willing to bid 2. I also didn't want to make it look like that I have no defense card in hand, otherwise my bluff might get caught. So I just bid 6, maybe making it look like that I have 1 defense card. Of course, PV4 could think that I have also just bid 2 swordsmen. And yeah, but PV4 is able to win it at the end. At least he has to send an army, so he drops down in strength and is also not looking that threatening any longer. Because otherwise I again might be a little bit in danger with my defending against an aggression, but I will actually go for strategy this turn anyway. But now that PV4 is dropped in strength, I can even get stronger, which could be a bit awkward for PV4, because maybe that could be that this last event is another strength event. I take the strategy here. I also take the selective breeding. I think it could be quite important to get some additional food production going, and PV4 will be able to develop the Conmon. He will have a lot of civil actions at his next turn, so he could relatively easily take it away for 2 civil actions. So I think I have to take the selective breeding here. Question is, do I want to go for the selective breeding already this turn? I could go for an upgrade, getting my food production going as early as possible. I thought about it, but I then didn't go for it and rather went for the strategy. Going for the strategy, first of all, will make sure that I go up to 14 strength, and PV4 then maybe can't seed at his next turn because he needs to, if this is a strength event. And if he doesn't seed, then I might still have another shot at pushing the terrorism into the next stack, and then I would have a nice stack of 2 H2 events, which could potentially be quite hurtful for PV4. So I thought getting stronger now could be quite important if that is indeed a strength event. And so I developed a strategy, and also if I go for selective breeding now, I can't build this third lab, and I think the additional science from this lab might be quite important, because if I would go for the selective breeding, then if I would have not built this lab now, I would be at 5 science at the next turn, so just enough to go for selective breeding. So if I go for selective breeding and would not build this lab, I would have just enough to go for strategy at the next turn, so that still works out relatively nicely. But after that, I would only have 5 science left, which is not enough to go for military tech. I also maybe can't that easily invest into the opera, so I thought getting an additional lab here might help me quite a lot with the science, and also there's Bill Gates, there are some lab leaders, there's space flights, so it might, if I maybe get computers or something, also turn out to be quite nice to have the third lab going. And then with my last civil action, I will just take this rich land. It will allow me to go for 2 upgrades to selective breeding at the next turn if I want to go for that. Finally, this turn I don't have to worry if I get it by an aggression, and now I also draw defense cards. That is definitely quite nice to have. PV4 doesn't see it, so maybe there is a strength event. He takes quite a bunch of cards, Opera, Urban Growth, some yellow cards, also the cannons, otherwise that would have been discarded. And he is willing to build another army, so that is definitely indicating that there might be a strength event on top. But I think instead of fighting for the strength event, I think it is a lot better to just eat it. There might be something bad, but I have now the chance to push this terrorism, and now those H2 events aren't that far away. I have some other events, so I can just push now every turn, and there is a little bit of a gap in culture between me and PV4, so I think this terrorism has some potential. PV4 has taken the opera now, also the urban growth, so it's not that unlikely that he maybe invests into an opera relatively soon, and so I thought I really wanted to have this terrorism into the deck. There might be a strength event, and there actually is one, the uncertain borders. PV4 will steal 1 yellow token from me, so that's definitely a bit annoying, but at least it will make sure that I will get some nice events going at some point. And also I know for certain those 2 events, so as soon as we reach the stage, I just have all the information. I don't need to prepare for strength events, so that just gives me a bit of breathing room maybe at this point. So I really wanted to push this terrorism now. Then at this turn I want to get my food production going. I just lost the yellow token. If I don't increase my food production, I might have some issues with getting enough population. So and losing the yellow token is a bit annoying, because if I would have still kept it, then I would have 1 more food production now. Then I would be at 8. It would just be enough to increase my population 2 times with it costing 4 food. Now I'm at 7, so I will have just 3 food lying around. It's a bit annoying, but again, PV4 did put an effort into getting stronger. So and I will have now some nice events coming, so I think that is still worth it pushing. And then I have some civil actions left. I will take an efficient upgrade. I will take another efficient upgrade. I don't really have a clear use for those yet, but if there's a very early oil, maybe I could just go for some oil, which could be interesting. Of course, in 2-player games, maybe oil is not that strong, but if I get it going that early and that quickly, it could still be quite nice. There's also Marie Curie, or there could be computers, and there are a lot of lab leaders, so it could be interesting for that. But I will also take 1 card where I have at least 1 guaranteed use to get an efficient upgrade going. I will take this organized religion. There's of course team sports available for 1, but if I take it, I can't do that much else anyway. I have a full hand, and now PV4 is without a happy face solution. He has the opera, but no organized religion, no team sports. Of course, at the moment he's perfectly fine, but at some point he will lose the Hanging Gardens to the Ravages of Time, so maybe it could be a bit of an issue for him to not have any happy face technology in hands. So I went for the organized religion, and I also just think that being able to upgrade just religion very cheaply is just very nice. There's no Pierre in the game, so it might also just be the better happy face solution for myself, and it also gives me a guaranteed use for 1 of those efficient upgrades, even if it is only for 2 resources. I keep a bunch of different tactics still and then draw some more events. The economic progress maybe could be interesting, especially if there should indeed be an early oil available. Now H3 will start. We can maybe also take a quick look at the overview. PV4 has a little bit of a culture lead, but it's not that big. Our economies are relatively similar. We both have 7 science production. I have a bit more resource production. I have also now the better food production. I have some happy face issues at the moment. Yeah, I definitely have some um, no, I think it's really close, this position. Maybe you have a slightly better economy, but PV4 has a little bit of a cash lead. But one thing that maybe could push the game into my direction could be those H2 events. Those might be quite hurtful for PV4. On the other hand, I was also quite afraid of one event, which at a turn before I could have potentially skipped, but only at the expense of not going for selective breeding, which I felt was too costly at the end, and that is the rebellion. I was really afraid that PV4 has seeded a rebellion here with the Hanging Gardens. That definitely would make quite some sense, so I was really afraid of that event here. But there's no rebellion, instead even another territory, and no, so this time I am able to win it. I can even win it for only 1 swordsman and a colonization card. However, I actually made a decision at the end to send 2 swordsmen away, because my plan is to go for fortifications at some point, so I don't really need those swordsmen anyway. And now that I have another yellow token in my bank, I am now at 7 food, and I'm at can increase my population once for 3, so I can increase it for 3 and then for 4. That's just very smooth, and otherwise I again would have all 3 food lying around at the end of my turns. And I also can keep the defense card. Who knows, maybe there's another colony coming, maybe I can need it to defend myself at some point. So at the end I just send 2 swordsmen away here instead of 1 swordsman and a colonization card. PV4 will this turn start going for the Opera. I can use the Urban Growth for that, so it's relatively cheap, but he doesn't have the Architecture. That's maybe another advantage that I have. My operas will be quite a bit cheaper, and that of course also could potentially make a difference. And I wasn't too unhappy that PV4 wills this Opera. I mean, it makes definitely a lot of sense for him, but it also at least makes sure that I have a nice target for the terrorism. PV4 then takes the military build-up, the Rifleman. As soon as he drops weaker at some point, he has a lot of free resources available, so that could maybe make it that I maybe rather should just try to stay weaker, so that PV4 can't that easily make use out of all of those resources. Now it's my turn, and I push here. I think the immigration, with some additional yellow tokens, and I have the organized religion hand in hand. I know that PV4 will lose the Hanging Gardens before that event will be revealed, so maybe he will actually have some happy face issues. So I seed this event into the deck now. And of course there could be another strength event, and actually another reason why I wanted to send another swordsman away is that now I have no unhappy worker. If I only send 1 swordsman away, I would still have 1 unhappy worker, and I thought it might be very nice to push. Of course, there might be some strength events still in the deck, but probably the 2 worst ones are already out, and I kind of want to push to make it that those events are revealed as quickly as possible. So the Opera, the Terrorism, and the Ravages of Time. And now if the other event is the Rebellion, now I wouldn't get hit by it. If I only send 1 swordsman, I would get hit by it. So that was actually also quite a big reason for this decision to send 2 swordsmen away. And so I push now. As I said, I want to get these other events out as quickly as possible. And there was actually an event on top that surprised me a little bit, and also it hurts me definitely quite a bit. Losing 7 food to the Reds surprised me, because PV4 was the one who had irrigations going for quite a while. I only went for the selective breeding very recently, but PV4 may be expected that I will go for the selective breeding, and he maybe has already a final amount of population out, so maybe he felt like he can prepare for it, and he can maybe also suffer, or he can live with the consequences a bit better. And I think I definitely get hurt quite a bit more by that, and wasn't too happy about this event. This turn I will go for the cannons, otherwise I will be in danger of an aggression. I will build 1 that puts me at 13 strength. I don't really need to get stronger, because I know that there are no strength events coming. And no, there is not really that much that I can invest stuff into this turn. I can't go for operas, I don't have enough science, there are also no computers or stuff available. So I just take some cards, I take reserves, I take another copy of reserves. Now I have a full hand, I think. So I developed the organized religion. I will go for one upgrade. Actually, I think I didn't have a full hand because of the library. I will use one of those efficient upgrades, and then I take the engineering genius. Actually, I think I would have done the same turn if the reds wouldn't have been revealed, and because then I was actually hoping then I would have 7 food more after my turns. It would be a 12, and with the reserves I could play it for food, and with the architecture I would have the nice potential to finish the red cross, but sadly the reds prevented that option from me. And yeah, but I still can get a lot of nice yellow cards this turn. I already fixed my happy faces, I spent the civil actions already. I still leave myself with enough science to maybe go for computers, to go for opera, even for oil, even though at the next turn it might already be too late. But there's also Marie Curie coming down the road. With her, maybe it could still be worth it. And also with having the economic progress, so the oil could also still be interesting. So I felt like I am prepared for some different options. But I still think it's a relatively close position. PV4 has a bit of a culture lead, and I maybe still have a bit of a better economy. I keep some cards in hand. I will draw 2 impacts, impact of variety and science. I was relatively happy about it. Variety is relatively safe impact, and impact of science has some nice potential, especially with being in last position. PV4 won't see it, maybe he is suspecting that there might be something bad coming. He just goes for the mechanized agriculture. He will use an efficient upgrade immediately for that with the Harvard College, and then even goes for 2 upgrades immediately. I was thinking that maybe he is preparing for the Red Cross. He is also using one of his 3 military actions, and at the next turn he maybe can just go for the Red Cross if he wants to. I could potentially take it away, but I have not the most population out, and I think that might be a bit too costly for me. Now, this turn I want to see it. I know that there are some nice events coming, and Impact of Variety is a relatively safe impact to push, and the Ravages of Time is the first one of the cards that is revealed. I think I was hoping a little bit more for the terrorism, so that I can destroy the operas as soon as possible, but the Ravages of Time is definitely also not bad. I then have to destroy the library. I will go for the opera. No, I don't have enough science to go for movies, and I will have some free population. The operas are relatively cheap, so even though there's the biggest synergy in there, I still think it's very nice to go for it just for some additional culture production. And so I go for 1 opera. I then take the endowment, I take the revolutionary idea. I think getting some additional science could be quite nice. Being at 8 might be a little bit too low, and I could maybe still get some nice technology. Civil service could be interesting. Maybe if I draw some nice military cards, I could even try to go for an aggressive path. If I draw an H3 tactic in a war something, and then maybe it could be nice to go for enough military techs. And no, but now I actually think I have a full hand because the library is destroyed now, so I have to make space in my hand. For that I will play reserves for food and increase my population, just using some civil actions for that already. At the next turn I can increase my population again. If playing the reserves for resource, I could potentially even build 2 operas if I want to. So no, I still have a lot of yellow cards in hand. So as I still no, was relatively happy about this turn. I will draw some cards, and I get an interesting H3 tactic here, the mechanized army. I have the cavalryman, so if I maybe get air forces in a war, then maybe I could also try to go for a military path. BV4 doesn't see it. He will go for the Red Cross, and then it goes for the urban growth, for the patriotism. Builds another warrior, upgrades another warrior, reveals the classic army tactics, so it puts a little bit of pressure on me, and then will also build 2 stages of the Red Cross already. The next turn he has enough food to finish it, so I will only be able to build 1 stage. Now it is my turn and I want to push. I push the impact of science here, which is a little bit dangerous because there's still the possibility that maybe PV4 could go for computers or multimedia, but I have the knowledge about it, I have the architecture, so for me maybe those buildings are a bit cheaper, and so I was hoping that I can prepare for it. Also, PV4 will lose Nobel at some point, and then he will drop, science production will drop, so I was willing to risk it here, because the national pride might not be that great. Economic progress maybe, but PV4 would also get a lot of additional food. Maybe doesn't even need that much food then, but So that could maybe have been an alternative, but at the end I wanted to see the impact of science, and I was hoping that I will be able to make it work. The terrorism is revealed now, so that's very nice, and now I'm able to destroy PV4's opera, so I think that is actually quite a big swing. PV4 is losing basically 8 resources here, and also a bunch of culture reduction, because he always maybe would have had 1 opera more, so that is definitely quite a big swing here, and the terrorism is an event that has quite a bit of potential. I will then definitely build 1 stage of the Red Cross. If I don't build it, it's basically a 12 culture swing, and then I will go for the space flight. I also want to have a wonder for myself. Hollywood maybe could be interesting, maybe I could get Flaming, maybe I could get the opera, but I could also not get Flaming, and then I might not have that many resources to build that many operas and multimedias. Maybe that the Hollywood will be better than the space flight. The space flight is also available cheaper, and if PV4 maybe should try to finish Red Cross and take a new wonder immediately, then maybe the space flight would also be the best one for him, though he doesn't have the most resources, so it's maybe also not that easily possible for him to go for H3 wonder. But I will go for one. I also have the Engineering Genius in hand. I will take the reserves. I will build 1 cannon. I will also reveal the tactic, going up to 21 strength. And then I will play the revolutionary idea, making space in my hand, and I take the reserves. I will skip the air forces. Maybe that's a little bit risky. I also skip the computers, which is maybe also a little bit risky with the impact of science coming, but there's another copy coming, the multimedias are coming, so I don't think the computers is that important here. The air forces could be a little bit risky, but I have this tactic in hand. I was hoping that I should be hopefully fine with having this tactic. And for example, at the next turn I have enough resources with all of those reserves to maybe go for enough units to go for 2 of those tactics, and then PV4 maybe can't go for that much at the next turn, so hopefully there won't be any danger at the next turn. And then in 2 turns, maybe it could be a little bit dangerous, but one thing is also that there's still Gandhi in the deck, so if PV4 tries to go for something aggressive, then I could maybe also just go for Gandhi, because at some point I will lose Napoleon, and then of course I have to be a little bit careful. But if I don't take this copy of reserves, I will leave it to PV4. He really doesn't have that many resources, so I think him getting these reserves could be quite helpful for him, and so I rather want to deny it, also have it for myself, so that I can maybe invest as many resources as possible into urban buildings, while also still being able to finish the space flight. And so I was willing to skip the air forces here. Maybe there's some potential that it could backfire, but maybe also I could still have a chance to grab the second copy. Maybe PV4 won't try anything aggressive anyway, so I have this tactic. So at the end I was willing to skip the air forces. I do draw some impacts. Impact of Wonders is not that great. Technology has maybe some potential, but for now I have not developed a single H3 technology yet. So PV4 I might be a bit better in that for now, and it might maybe also stay that way. But the Impact of Balance is a seedable impact, so definitely a draw that I can work with. Also, I will let engineering stay on 2 civil actions. If PV4 wants to take 2 blue technologies with engineering and the military theory, then the United Nations will be in the discard spot, which will remove the option from him to go for an H3 wonder, but I wasn't too certain if he wants to go for one anyway, but I also thought it might be quite a nice setup. There are some interesting technologies available for him, but if he takes both of those, he takes away the option from him to go for an H3 wonder. I definitely expected PV4 to go for the engineering. The crime wave was revealed, so I lose a bit of culture, but it's also not too bad. There could have been worse events. The next one will be the emigration. I have knowledge about that one. PV4 then will finish the Red Cross using the engineering. Will also save some resource when building this opera. Takes then the military theory and will increase its population. This turn I again wanted to seed. I have some impacts in hand, and so it could be nice to seed. Also, no. However, I had to think about something, because if I seed, then the impact of science could be revealed in PV4's turn, and PV4 at the moment has still more science production. And the question is if I can set myself up nicely for the impact of science. And it was actually not that easily possible, but at the end I found a solution that I was happy enough with, and then I didn't want to miss out my politics phase. Also the immigration at the moment would hit PV4. Maybe with having that much food production it's not that bad, but it's still also civil action that he loses when he loses a population, so I still think it could be a bit annoying for him, and so I wanted to push now. First of all, I considered pushing the impact of balance. That should be a relatively fine impact. It's, I think, very likely that PV4 will increase its resource production by a lot, so that should be a relatively fine impact. But I still have 3 politics phases left, this one and then 2 more. And at the moment, impact of balance is basically only an impact that I can seed for certain. Impact of wonders I will seed only very unlikely. Impact of technology maybe, but it's also not, it's definitely possible that PV4 will develop enough H3 techs. And with that, I maybe can't use that many politics phase anyway, and it might be that at the next turn I won't draw any cards. And so I actually made a decision to seed an H2 event here, getting some culture from that, and I also thought it might have some nice potential. I see the economic progress, the immigration is revealed. And now, the thing is, if now PV4 pushes at this next turn, then I push, and then PV4 pushes again, then the economic progress will be revealed at PV4's last turn. But that only happens when all of the player pushes all the times. And maybe if I don't draw a nice impact with my next draw, I could maybe just skip pushing. And then, if one of us skips pushing for one time, then it actually won't be revealed on PV4's last turn, but on my last turn, making it that I would be able to get benefits out of the economic progress, while PV4 won't be able to get any benefits. So that event has some interesting potential. If it should be revealed on PV4's turn, then we both get something out of it, but with me having an H3 wonder, I thought maybe it could be that I could maybe use the resources better than him, and so at the end I went for seeding the economic progress. I will then play the reserves resource. The first thing that I was looking at was going for Einstein, going for multimedia, and building one, but I have to be careful here, I think, because PV4 could have a bit of a strength potential. He could, for example, develop the military theory, go for 2 classic armies. He could even, with having 2 patriotisms, go for air forces, and then he, with the patriotism, has 3 additional military actions that he can use for building units. So he could build a rifleman, a knight, and an air force, having 1 normal classic army with air forces and an outdated one. But maybe going for military theory would be a bit better, as the military theory also gives him 5 additional strength, but he has some military potential here. And I will lose Napoleon, so even if I set myself up to go for 2 mechanized armies, I actually would not be able to defend. And if I want to set myself up for that, then I can't invest into multimedia, and if I can't invest into multimedia, then there would be the danger that PV4 opens Impact of Science at his turn. So that definitely should not be allowed to happen. I could have just not seeded to avoid this issue, but then maybe I also can't seed it the next turn if PV4 pushes and I still have lower science production. So I wanted to push, and I wanted to prepare for the Impact of Science, but I would be quite vulnerable if I do so, but there's one nice way how I can make that work, and that is with going for Gandhi, because PV4 doesn't have enough military actions to declare war against Gandhi. So with going for him, I'm completely safe, meaning I can go for Gandhi, and then I can also go for the multimedia, building one that gets me out of corruption, and it also makes sure that I'm prepared for the Impact of Science. I was just a little bit afraid that maybe the Impact of Science won't be revealed on PV4's turn, or maybe he just doesn't see it, and then he goes for Einstein and multimedia himself. And PV4, I think, has some different options at this turn. I was hoping that maybe a more interesting option for him could be to just take the Revolutionary Idea Blade with Harvard College, go for democracy, and then build some operas. With the democracy is enough urban building limit to build 4 operas, and I was hoping that maybe that could be more interesting for him and that he won't prepare for the Impact of Science. But it only would happen if PV4 either doesn't push or if it would be the second event, so I was hoping that it will be revealed now. And if it isn't revealed, I was hoping that PV4 won't increase his science production during his next turn. I will draw some events, and I draw 1 impact that I can also push, the Impact of Industry. So now I have 2 more impacts that I can push, so I can potentially use both of my politics phases, which I was quite happy about. But I also didn't draw 2 impacts, because then it maybe could backfire having seeded economic progress, but now I have 2 politics phases left and 2 impacts that should work quite nicely. Impact of Technology is still not looking that great, but maybe if PV4 doesn't find the civil actions to develop a lot of tax, it could still turn out to be a nice impact as well. PV4 will see it, and I was very happy to see that the impact of science is revealed, and that now that impact is out of the way. It has given me plus 10 culture against PV4. Now he won't go for multimedia. Who knows? Maybe that impact changed his decision, but maybe he wouldn't have gone for more science production anyway. He will go for reserves and blade, so he won't go for the democracy instead. After building this opera, he will actually go for civil service, interestingly. And then he will disband a warrior, builds another opera, takes the revolutionary idea. I was a little bit surprised by that. I thought maybe the democracy play could also be quite interesting. But then he couldn't play the resources, so he would only build one opera, so he has the same culture production for now. Maybe would have a little bit of a bigger potential at the next turn, but this play, of course, also might have something to do with the impacts. Now he has the civil unrest, he can develop the military theory at the next turn. And so I thought maybe there's the chance that the impact of progress is coming. And then it makes a lot of sense to deny the civil unrest, the civil service from me. So he builds up some culture production, maybe prepares for some impacts, but with the impact of science, I'm not that much behind in culture. I will get the space flight. I also have this endowment in hand, so I was relatively confident about my position, but it's still definitely everything possible. PV4 could have some nice impacts, and but I thought it might be looking good for me at this point. Now H4 will start. I will see the impact of balance. I could also think about not seeding so that I maybe can guarantee that the economic progress is revealed on PV4's turn, but then it could also just happen that PV4 actually doesn't have an impact to seed, and then it won't be revealed at my turn. So I don't think it makes sense to hold back on seeding an impact here, because both of those impacts are a little bit better for me. I get a culture for seeding, so I want to open. I want to see those impacts. First, impact of balance, the impact of variety is revealed. That also gives me +4 against PV4. Then I will take the movies. I thought it might, on one hand, it's not bad for me, but it also is maybe nice as a denial from PV4. If the impact of progress is indeed in there, maybe he wants to go for military theory anyway, but if not, then the movies could be an interesting tech for him, especially if he wants to go for Fleming, which seemed to be the best leader for him. So I will take those movies. I will also take the satellites. It will not be ideal with the space flight because I already have the cartography, but I thought that maybe there's a good chance that the impact of progress is in there. And so I wanted to have those satellites. I also take the professional sports, just taking as many technologies as I can develop for the space flight. And then I have still 3 civil actions left, and I use those for increasing my population, developing the movies, and just building one. At the next turn, the economic progress will be revealed, and then I maybe should be able, for example, to finish the space flight and develop 2 techs, go for 1 upgrade. I actually won't have a little bit of an issue with my civil actions. I have a lot of things that I want to do, also play the endowment, so I actually won't have enough civil actions to play both of those reserves for resources, but I will be able to go for 1 upgrade. I can also maybe consider doing some other stuff. So, so I at the end went for this turn. And then PV4 will increase his population, will increase it again, will build a religion, will build another religion. He doesn't have the urban building limit to build another opera, at least the religions also give him +2 culture. He will then go for Fleming and the military theory. And he didn't have an impact to push, which will be bad for him, as he didn't get any value out of the economic progress, but all of his civil actions he used relatively nicely, so I'm not sure if it would have been that useful for him. Maybe he just wouldn't have had the civil actions to do a lot more stuff, but of course it would maybe give him some more options. Maybe he would be able to make his turn a little bit better, but of course I was in general, I was just very happy that he didn't have an impact to seed in general. I have one. I see the impact of industry into the deck. I will open the economic progress, it will give me a little bit of additional resources and food. And in this turn, I will blow the endowment. I will develop 2 technologies. I will finish the space flight. I could now play the reserves for resource, go for an upgrade, giving me 1 safe culture and +1 for architecture, but at the end I rather increased my population, played the reserves for resources and built another swordsman, and that gives me +2 for impact of population, +1 for competition, and most importantly +4 for impact of harmony. Impact of harmony could potentially be a nice impact for PV4. I will go into the final impacts with the lead, so I think it makes sense to prepare for an impact that potentially could be bad for me. I'm in general relatively nicely prepared for impact, so there are not that many where would be really bad. Impact of culture, for example, could be one. I mean, there's also impact of strength, so there definitely could be one. Maybe I should rather just go for the safe culture, but at the end I went for building the swordsman. And no, then we can take a look at the final impacts, and I will go into the final impacts with the 25 culture lead. PV4 has 2 impacts in there, and he would have to catch up quite a lot with those, and so I think I have very, very good chances here. The first impact is the impact of balance that was seeded by me and gives me +2 against PV4. The next one is the impact of industry, it gives me +1, so the next 2 impacts will be the one that were seeded by PV4. The first one will be the impact of progress, so that one is indeed in there, giving PV4 +4 against me. And the other one is the impact of agriculture, that gives PV4 also +4 against me. So you had some decent impacts, but not some really strong ones, and with that I'm able to win this game. I think even if with impact of strength and culture, PV4 would not have enough to catch up with the final impacts, and no, so I'm at the end able to win this game, which I'm quite happy about. And no, I think it was a game that was relatively close between us for quite a while, and actually until the end. I mean, I had a 20 culture lead at the end, but it's not that much. And no, I think one very nice thing for me was that I got the Republic very early. That really gave me a very big boost. Otherwise, maybe I could have considered going for monarchy, or otherwise I would have to wait, but those government forms also can be late, so I think that was definitely very nice for me. Also, I actually was vulnerable for an aggression for quite a long time during H1 and H2, but I always only required one H1 defense card to defend, and PV4 didn't have that many military actions, so he never went for an aggression, which I was happy about because I couldn't have defended. And no, and then I think during H3, those 2 events, especially the terrorism, I think were quite nice for me. Losing this opera was quite costly for PV4, and then also I had some decent impacts, and with that at the end I'm able to win this game. And now that this game is finished, we can also take a look at the current standings. And with getting another win, my position is now really looking quite nicely. I am now at 18 points and have still 4 games to come. So I think now I have really good chances to advance. I really would have maybe lose all of my games, or maybe lose 3 of them, finish only at the second place in one, or some of this stuff has to happen that I'm really in danger of not advancing. I think 20 points or something like this gives you a very good chance to advance at least to the second place. Ideally, I would like to advance to the first place. For this, I maybe still would still need some more points, but no, my opponents don't have that many games left, so I think I'm in quite a nice position now. And no, for PV4 it's not looking that great after that loss, but he also still has chances. He has 1 3-player game left. If he manages to win this, then he's at 16 points. And he then doesn't have ideal chances, but it's definitely possible for him to advance if the other 2 opponents don't score too many points in their remaining games. So PV4 does have an ideal position at the moment, but is not out of the running. And yeah, so I'm very happy about my position. I of course want to try to score as many points as possible, but I maybe don't even need that many now to make it to the next stage. But as I said, ideally I want to be at the first place. Engo has still 3 games left. He could definitely still manage to score some wins, and then I might still need some points to make sure that I finish at the first place. But no, I'm just in a really nice position, and hopefully I will be able to convert this position into an advancement to the next stage. Alright, I hope it was an interesting game for you. Thanks for watching, have a nice time, and then see you in the next video.